Welcome, welcome to our brand new podcast called The Dispatch. So happy and excited to have you here on the first ride with us. We're live, we're rolling. So let's go ahead and do this. Now, The Dispatch is a new podcast series built specifically for people who move people. So if you have a business where you move people, or work for a company where you move people, or even thinking of starting a company where you move people, this is the podcast for you. So in this podcast, we're going to be talking with voices from all across the industry, whether it's actual operators who have done it, who have actually grown a business. So you can, pick out little tidbits of information, little nuggets of wisdom along the way. But we're also going to be talking to other, for example, technology leaders, people who started reservation systems and they serve actual operators. We're going to be talking to maybe people in legal, people in marketing, really all walks of life to give you all the information you need to make sure you're running your business smoothly. So the goal at the end of the day is, to have a place where you can get a lot of information, but it's also to essentially create a community, right? We want to make sure that we start a place where you can come to and you can talk to other like-minded people, people from the industry, to share ideas, to share different strategies, and so on. So very, very excited to have you here on the very first episode. Without further ado, let's hit the road. Now, for the first episode, I'm excited to have Niall here with us. I wanted to start us off with an absolute bang, so I got someone amazing for us. Now, Niall has started Airporter UK, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, Airporter UK, from 2 buses all the way to... So he's going through all the different stages of a business, from the beginning to the middle to the end, and there's always different types of pains along the way, and we're going to dig into all of that here. But Niles is an absolute builder. He's an absolute innovator. Excited to have him here. You guys are going to learn a lot, so you're in for an absolute treat here. But also, I think one of the things that I uncovered from Niles from working with him previously is he loves technology, and he relationships and people. There's a lot of different kind of nuggets of wisdom when it comes to how to deal with people, and really, the people that work for you, the people that work with you. There's just a lot of importance in that aspect as well. So excited to dig into. Niles, welcome to the very first episode of The Dispatch.
Thank you so much, Sam.
Glad to have you here. So I guess I'd like to start out from the very, very beginning, right? At the very top. Why did you get started with transportation? What was it about transportation? What got you into this industry?
Okay. Well, it's a bit of a journey, pardon the pun, in terms of transport, but I'm actually part of a large family. I'm the youngest of 9 kids, and grew up in a family business. My dad had a newsagent shop growing up, and we all worked behind the counter. In the intro, you were talking about relationships, serving the public. I was working behind the counter since I was 12. So I've always been working with and serving the general public. So understood the relationships and the importance of customer service. My degree, I went to England and I did travel and tourism management. And it was a wonderful introduction to transport, because transport is one of the main components of the tourism product. Right. You've got accommodation, you've got accessibility, you've got activities and amenities all wrapped up together. But the accessibility is key. How do we connect and join the dots? As part of my degree, I did a year working with Thomas Cook, who were the biggest player back in those days in the mid-90s. A stunning tour operator, more or less invented vertical integration from selling the product, owning the product, and distributing the product. Amazing. The internet's changed all that, but they come out at the other end of the internet as another company, a financial company. But I learned tons working for that company, and I got to work in the central office in London. Some great mentors there. The attraction of tourism just kept growing. And so in terms of the relationship with transport, certainly I think when we were in Derry in Northern Ireland, transport between there and the Belfast airports didn't exist. There wasn't a direct link. And the opportunity to take that on board and grow a business germinated from that idea. So certainly to cut to the chase in terms of how the operation evolved. Yes, started with 2 vehicles, and then the business evolved over doing bits of everything. You know,
Right.
so if there was a job that came in that was required, you did
Mhm.
it, and then you would have said
For
it was
sure.
either a stag do or
Mhm.
a hen do or a wedding
Yeah.
or football match, whatever was going on, you supplied the group transport.
Right.
But airports began to sort of come into focus as a
Yeah.
big request. And then when you're talking about relationships, it was understanding that's where the demand was.
Yeah.
And then what was difficult about Northern Ireland is that it had its state operated by the transport, by the government.
Mhm.
So high legislation, high regulation, and getting permits, etc., was very difficult. Which is great about this podcast is you're going to be talking to legal, you're going to talk to accounting
Yeah.
and marketing because operations touches on so many things. You know,
Right.
actually the wheels moving at times is the last thing you actually do.
Okay. Oh, fantastic. So, okay, so you've definitely touched on quite a few things there that I do want to dig into. I think the first thing that I want to dig into is, since we're in the beginning of the story here, is in that very beginning, there are so many businesses that starts within the first year, within the first 2 years. Usually they tip one way or the other.
Yeah.
Right. So for you, how did you know that you're at a place where, okay, I got two buses, I'm running this. How did you know that, okay, it's time to grow, it's time to invest more and kind of, go into that next stage of your business's life cycle? What happened that triggered that for you? And what was the thoughts that was kind of going through your head back then?
Well, certainly what you need in terms of starting off is that you need reliability. So therefore, starting with one boss is difficult.
Mm.
You need two in case one doesn't start.
Right,
You know, so
right.
that would be a sort of a, if you're looking back in your life and saying, well, what would be the nuggets of information to share?
Yeah.
Is reliability is key. Relentless reliability and providing transport. We will be there. So you focus on
Wow.
that.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, so how did the business grow? The business grew then out of where you saw pockets of demand. Obviously, you're learning as you go along. Nobody comes in fully formed to this industry unless you're the large PLCs who actually have got management training programs based around it. So there's two different schools of thought. There are those who grow organically
Right.
and rise up, or else you've got the PLCs who know and learn the game and train down. You know, so
Right.
what I can do is share the momentum that drove us, but you need momentum.
Yes,
You need,
please do.
yeah,
Yes.
you know, it's not easy. You know,
Uh,
it's like I'm a driver, I'm a transport manager, you know,
Yeah.
the director, company owner, the whole thing. You know, so at 4 o'clock in the morning, if a driver can't make it, you're putting on, you
Yeah.
know, off you go. You know, so I learned that from my own upbringing and like being
Mhm.
part of a family business, the importance of the shop having to be open every day
Right.
at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And we were very much engaged with that sense of self-starting, I suppose,
Right.
it'd be a way of sharing that. So the business would grow over, you have to be committed to it.
Mhm.
There are days when it really hurts. There's days
Yeah.
when there's no customers and things like this, but you have faith in your own ability. You have faith in what the plan is,
Yeah.
and you just got to be committed to it.
Okay. Wow. So, okay. So that's the beginning. And then, it never gets easy, right? Would you say that it never got easier, or you just got better?
I think, you know what it is? It's,
Mhm.
if you play the guitar, right? I play the guitar, and your first couple of years are
Yeah.
murder because the
Right.
fingers are so sore.
Right.
You become calloused to the operation because
Mhm.
there are points in it that are just tough when you're moving
Yeah.
forward. But you've got muscle memory kicking in, you've got experience kicking in. You realize that you don't become as something else will come in and detract you from that's the beauty of working in operations.
Yeah.
Every day is different. So you build up a
Right.
lot of resilience as a result of that,
Right.
and then you become more callous to anything
Right.
that's becomes awkward or hard. You just get through it.
Wow. Okay. Amazing. So then let's kind of focus a little bit in the middle stage, right?
Yeah.
So the business is running. You're like, okay, this is actually working. You've started investing into it. How did the business evolve and change in that middle stage where, you kind of started peaking, sales are coming in, things are working? What were the new challenges that you're facing and how did you overcome?
Okay. So I love that. There's in your own business, you're always thinking that today something could happen, it could end. You don't really feel that I've made it. Every day going, if you get to the end of the day and then just like a reset, it's really funny,
Yeah. Wow.
looking back now,
Yeah.
your success was getting to the end of the day going, well, that was good. And then
Yeah.
we get
Yeah.
to do it again the next day, which is a great success.
Right.
That's you build up where your own metrics are and you live in that. You're looking at the middle part. When do we see changes happening? I mean, certainly we had done things all by paper. So
Yeah.
you go back to the early 2000s, where people still weren't using the internet to make bookings online, very, very seldom. The internet was just coming out in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
Websites was the thing, rather than, oh, let's book online. But we had paper tickets, A5
Right.
paper tickets that were triplicate. It was because I was telling you, it's a highly legislated environment that we operated in. So we had one ticket for the government, we
Yeah.
had one ticket for our records, and then one for the customer.
Wow.
And our driver, we say, handwrite the sort of the manifest
Yeah.
with tickets. So the driver arrived right there, and I said, "Well, your name is Sam. Oh, there's your ticket, Sam. There's your copy, my copy." And I put a wee tick beside your name.
Right.
I moved that across into a SQL database, so it became a bit more printed out the day before. Then we would
Right.
just add on names, if somebody phoned up.
Right.
And then the next stage was we needed to make a change.
Right.
How do we get to the next level? We're full capacity now.
Right.
We can't take any more bookings because we're open from 9 to 5. The
Okay.
buses are going out. So
Okay. So this change that you talk about, what was this change that you made at this stage?
yeah, well, the change was automation had to happen. Now, automation in general is happening throughout my company at that stage. We are inheriting new vehicles that are coming in that have got digital tachographs. So we were the first to bring in digital tachographs to Northern Ireland.
Wow.
We haven't, it was just, I didn't want it. I bought a vehicle and it came with a digital tachograph and a manual. So then I had to train all the drivers on how to use this because
Right.
beforehand that was paper. So
Right.
there's a major technological shift happening back in those days. And then once you start seeing technology and seeing the innovation and how it makes improvements, then I'm up for it. I'm going,
Right.
okay, what else can we do? And I was using this phrase back at the start, was taking everything from nuts and bolts to bits and bytes. Where can we make improvements?
Right.
And then once I got the garage part sorted with digital tachographs, then I was looking at the customer. We need to move this operation from booking to validation in one sweep because
Right.
we were using so many hours of time, storage, physical
Wow.
presence to make that happen.
Yeah.
So it was a change. So a lot of research and seeing how other companies do it
Mhm.
started the ball rolling.
Wow. Okay. So then, you say at this stage, when you are growing, when there's, new growing pains, you really kind of saw technology at this stage to be a very important point, right?
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit about, what type of technologies you used and how you were able to use these technologies?
Yeah, well, sure. I'm not a technophobe. I'm actually quite good with computers when they first came out, and I got really engrossed by the sort of technology behind it, and I enjoyed it. So it was a field that I lean in towards very easily. I worked for a great company when I left a university called Flight Software, and they were an engineering software platform, and I got to know how the mechanics work in the background of the
Yeah.
of software. And so I've always had an interest or an experience in it. And then was, how do I implement that into transport? Because it wasn't there. None of the state operators were using it because they were monopolies in effect. So they never had to run with innovation.
Yeah.
Being a small company, innovation is where we could win.
Right.
So but I needed to find something that was affordable as well as it could do. So you could go, I mean, there was platforms out there that could really change everything for you in the travel agent tour operation side,
Mhm.
but not so much in transport. So if I was to be honest, I saw one program or a software, and it was in London, and it was called Dot2.
Dot.
DOT, and it was that was a hotel connecting service. And I remember seeing it online with my research. And this is true. I says, Jennifer, I've seen where we're taking Airporter, and we booked a flight to London,
Yeah.
stayed in the hotel that the software company were using it, and we had the guy come and collect us at the airport.
Wow.
And it was amazing. And now the software they used was so expensive, and it was but the driver appeared in a Mercedes Sprinter, which we ended up moving to.
Yeah.
He had the iPads. I don't know, it wasn't an iPad because they weren't out back in the
Yeah.
mid 2000s, but it was a computer screen, and just the way he conducted himself. And I
Right.
thought, this is the way
it.
forward.
Yeah.
So, and then that's what I started looking for. How could I build something like that?
Yeah.
And then that led me to Zoe.
So,
Yeah.
you're always just kind of looking at your environment, looking at everything that's happening and just taking kind of inspirations, right?
Yeah.
You're like, this is my business. You didn't just kind of settle with how things were. You're always just looking at how I can evolve it. And then you So, and then you decided that, okay, so I need to look into the market now and I need to find something. And then you started searching for a reservation system,
Correct.
right? And then you landed on Zowie, the reservation system.
Correct.
Tell me a little bit about Zowie.
Okay, it's interesting because what do you search for? There's the number one thing. I'm going, what am I looking for? I've seen it in action, but I didn't know it was a reservation system or it was a back end administration. There's so many things that people could offer you, and there's trying to find the right questions to ask somebody and to search for. Because, okay, the internet was there and I was looking, but I wasn't too sure. As a computer system for buses. You can imagine. So it took a while to find the right questions to find.
Right.
And then I came across Banff Airporter. And Banff Airporter, an amazing operation.
Right.
And amazing in so many ways because obviously they were in Banff in Canada. I'm in Derry in Northern Ireland, 7,000 kilometres. That's the
parts of the.
They more or less started the same time as we did. Their journey distance between their hometown and the airports, practically the same.
Like a copy and paste, a carbon copy of your business.
Just like, at the moment going, wow, there's somebody else out there. And then I saw they're booking online. So then I saw Powered by Zowie. Yeah. So I didn't reach out to us, Mark, who owns Banff Airporter then, but I saw this Powered by, and I clicked onto that. And I found the website, and then I got in contact. I remember all the names. The guy called JP Ogilvy was the business development manager then, and I started talking to him. And then he introduced me to Corey, and then Corey and I connected. I was sharing with him what my aspirations were. Corey has this wonderful way of being able to distill your ask and provide the answers that you're looking for in a way that I was struggling to ask and create. So that was the start of the journey then with Zowie.
Okay. Wow. I mean, so if we fast forward to today, we're going to go back to the story there, but like I know this industry very well, especially from a technology sense. And I know there are a lot of operators in this industry who are using reservation systems and utilizing technologies, but there's also a very large segment of the industry, almost over 50%, that actually aren't using any type of reservation systems or technologies just because they're used to doing things the way they are. They're used to the pen and paper. What type of advice would you give them if they're kind of set in how they're doing and they're like, hey, it works for us. We don't need anything.
Great question. As I was just sharing beforehand, I struggled to go and see what was out there because I didn't know what to ask for. And then now when you go into the search of facilities or an AI, you can ask as many different questions in different ways and you'll get an answer that will take you to platforms that Zowie offer. But what's really interesting is that when I started looking for computer systems and buses, we were looking at tachographs, we were looking at GPS, we were looking at CCTVs, everything that was connected with the software. The question is, where would you advise somebody to start as well? If you can start with something that gives you a holistic approach of how you want to run your business in the future, then start there. Stephen Covey says they start with the end in mind. So if you say, well, look, where do I want to end up? And if you're serious and committed to the operation, then you want to be doing it right from the start. So what I found, and again, these are questions that I was exploring with Corey 20 years ago, but if it's an advice, I said, well, look, it's a wonderful industry. I mean, it's accessible in terms of buying vehicles and then finding the right demand and serving it.
Right.
But if you're going to do something like that, you become committed to it. So you've got to deliver reliability each stage. So to deliver reliability and commitment, you need the right tools. Right. So you'll have the right vehicle, you have the right drivers, the right training, etc. So how then do you support the customer flow? How do you support then the booking, the validations, and all that in one go? Right. And what's interesting, there are a lot of opportunities out there to see different types of suppliers offering different types. But the more that you can create one platform, and it took me, I mean, when we were, I think I was sharing with you before the podcast, like back in the early days, everything was supported by SIMs. I mean, every software solution come in, you required another SIM to get access to it. So you're at a fortune on connectivity before you could get access to the solution. Yeah. Now you've got a solution that's supported by one. So if I would say that would be your starting point. And then you want to be able to drill down the metrics and the reports that basically give you directionable progress afterwards, you know.
Right.
So, and I found, and what I've seen actually over the years is how Zoe has lent and developed more specifically into that realm. Basically. I mean, like the solutions that are now on board outside of the features that were already there, but now really drilling into what would a new operation look for. As I was saying, starting with the end in mind, making sure that I don't want to get to a certain level, then start again. And you want to be engaging with a platform that's going to provide the direction for where you want to go to, not where you are right now.
Right. Wow. Wow. Great answer. Okay. So to dig a little bit into that. So, okay. So there's only a lot of our listeners here. Some might be startups. Some might be, you know, at different stages of their life. Let's talk about that one stage in your life. So now you've adopted technologies. You've been running the business for a few years. Things are working out well, but you're still continuously growing, right? You're still evolving the business. So at that stage where you've hit maturity, and now it's like, okay, now I still got to grow because I can't keep doing what I was doing yesterday. What did that stage look like? And what are some of the strategies that you use there to help you continuously evolve and grow?
Okay. There's several parts I can answer to that. Well, first of all, when using the line, start with the end in mind. I always knew I was going to sell the business. The reason being is that it takes everything. I mean, I give over 20, nearly 25 years to it.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, because it becomes your life. It becomes our family life. Myself and Jennifer ran the business, my wife, and our two kids grew up within it. And it wasn't a situation that I wanted to have them continue their lives with, because you have to become, you know, I don't want to put my passion or into their lives. And they might want to do it. And then therefore you have a business that would be unfair to them, you know. So my plan was always to grow the business and making it as attractive as possible. And it's, again, it was one of those overnight sort of 15-year successes. It took a long time, you know, so that would have been my sort of driving goal. So one day I will present this in a way that will attract. And I got to know all the players that were in the UK, the large operators, understand what they were looking for in terms of acquiring businesses. They use a term called land and expand. Okay, so it was very key, because you can spend all the time you want and saying, no matter a nice shiny bus, but these guys want to come in and you have to be able to demonstrate exactly what you have been doing. So you want clarity in your reporting. You want to be able to show that the business starts from day one in a fashion that meets what the big guys want. Also, you want to be able to show where there is opportunity. So they're going to come in, the PLCs, the large multinationals will come in with fleets. They'll just go, excuse me, and then they go, boom. And it's wonderful to watch, like, you know, so I knew what they were looking for. It was requiring several massive gear changes for us. High risk, because there was no givens in any of this. So I knew what big companies would be looking for. Did not necessarily mean that they would be buying them.
Wow.
So it required a change in location. I needed to, what I call future-proof. So I had like 30 vehicles coming to the end, but the yard that I bought, I could have put 60 in. But I knew that these guys coming in would be buying more vehicles and taking it up. So the plan was always to make it as attractive, but also it could land and expand on the first.
Okay, so there's two kind of interesting concepts that do tie into each other that you mentioned here that I actually want to outline. So you mentioned that start with the end in mind, right? The Stephen Covey quote that you mentioned. But also you said, you know, operate your business as you're going to sell it. Right. So these two actually tie in very, very nicely, because every day when you're operating, not that you actually be like, hey, I'm going to sell this on this day for this much. That doesn't really matter. You're just operating like you're ready to sell. And that's actually a very interesting concept. Like, you know, when I think about it, when I went to sell my house, in the 2 or 3 months I was selling my house, it was probably in its most absolute pristine stage, right? Everything was working. Nothing was leaking. Everything was perfect. The paint job was nice. It was clean. So that's a very interesting concept. And actually, I never really kind of brought that back into a business world. So operating your business as if you're ready to sell it at any point. So that means that all the housekeeping must be done. And I really, really like that.
Yeah. And one of our very first accountants shared that with us. And he says, oh, your business should always be available for sale. And it was a passing comment or something. I never go in.
And you just caught that. You're like, that's,
which is interesting. That gives you the driving mantra every day. You know, it's like only as good as the last passenger if you get off the bus. And then it goes back to my upbringing was the importance of customer service.
Right.
So my dad was amazing at it, and we were all schooled and trained how to
Yeah.
conduct yourself and serve, because you're serving the public.
Yeah.
And if they don't get good service, they will vote with their feet, either not come back, or even
Right.
worse, tell others. And
Right.
then you're damn. So our business was always built on every customer is a king, a
Yeah.
queen, and making sure that they get the highest level of quality.
Wow. Okay, awesome. So that's a nugget of information for you. Better write that down. So no matter what, I think this is something that applies in transportation or really any other business. Operate as if you're going to sell it. Write that down. Awesome. So the next question. Okay, so now we're at the stage now where the business is growing. It's continuously kind of evolving, and then you got acquired by Air Coach, right? One of the
Yeah.
largest. Tell me a little bit about Air Coach, but also tell me about how this whole thing started. How did the process start? How did you know that it was time? Kind of, if there are listeners that are at that stage in their business where they're thinking like, should I, sell or should I
Yeah.
keep? Just kind of paint the picture around that era in your business.
Okay. Yes. Air Coach is owned by First Group PLC,
Mhm.
who, for American listeners, there's very much Greyhound. They own Greyhound.
Okay,
on
wow.
So they own Greyhound,
Yeah.
and they own Love Lost, and they own the yellow transport buses too as well here.
Yeah.
So huge, and they are like amazing public transport operation. So, and they own Air Coach,
Yeah.
which operates in Dublin, and we're in the north of Ireland,
Yeah.
and they're in the south of Ireland, two different jurisdictions.
Right.
And so our first group purchased Airporter through Air Coach. This wasn't my first dalliance into acquisition. I've had several approaches in over maybe a 10-year period, possibly more. And this is where it gets interesting, because you then get offers, and then you have to make the decision, what type of offer are you looking for?
Right.
People are typically starting off, well, we'll look at a joint venture, and they'll come in and they'll support the growth. And then
Right.
we're looking at, you doing another 10 years, but you're not committed because you own 50% less or whatever. So
Right.
each acquisition will be different.
Right.
Okay. When you say, look, if you're looking to grow and sell the business, then be mindful of what type of exit you would be looking for.
Right.
What was interesting, I think there was maybe 10 different engagements of different levels of certainty, non-certain in this game. I remember our solicitor lawyer at the time, he says, the deal isn't done until it's signed on the contract. No matter how long the due diligence process,
Yeah.
you could be in talks for 2 years, and then it can collapse 5 minutes before the
Wow.
end. It's difficult because you burn a lot of energy to
Right,
support that
bet.
process. But in terms of understanding what the process is like, you need to know what type of exit you're looking for. Are you
Right.
looking for, I want to sell everything and then start afresh? Or I'm looking at, well, I'll do an earn-out where people will
Mhm.
come in and offer you, we'll buy the company in 4 years' time. You have to commit to that certain levels of delivery to do that. And there's lots of different ways. Like, as I mentioned, I would have had close to maybe 10 different types of
Right.
approaches. And over that period, I got to know what I was looking for. And again, not to say you try to manifest these things in your head, or you try to sort of say, well, look, it will happen at some stage. But I did.
Yeah.
I got the call
Mhm.
that I was looking for, and it was always to be the best fit with Air Coach.
Right.
But they were amazing. I'm totally amazing to deal with.
Yeah.
So professional, and from start to finish, and it just really felt that you will know. So in terms of people watching and going through that process, you will know
Yeah.
when it happens that everything flows in the
Yeah.
direction that it should.
Okay, so you mentioned that there was about multiple different types of
Yeah.
kind of mergers, or was it an acquisition, or so on and so on. So essentially, the way that you actually decided which one was the best option for you, was this something that came to you because you had been in your business for so long, you've had so many conversations, so it wasn't something that you had to, plan way before and execute. It was just kind of came naturally.
If I was to be honest, I mean, like, what we had created with Airporter and what it was doing for the city and the connectivity, I want something that when I sell it, it's going to grow and develop even further. So,
Wow.
and I love what Air Coach do, and I love the plans that they have for the city and region,
Yeah.
and they will develop that beyond what in my wildest dreams what I could ever do. Other people were coming and asking for, or say, we'll make you an offer, but I wouldn't have been convinced
Yeah.
that they would have served the region the way I would
Right.
like it to. So
So
I haven't. I always at the bottom of my heart, it's like I always wanted to make sure that the city would grow as a respect for the sale afterwards.
right.
And Air Coach is doing that now, which is amazing.
Wow. And I guess the decision for you was probably easy because of starting the end in mind. For you, it wasn't just something that you had to kind of decide on at the time or the year
Yeah.
before, just because you'd already kind of pre-planned, you'd already kind of had it set in your head, and it just felt natural when the time was right. Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. And then okay, so and then you got acquired. How long was this entire process of starting to acquire, and kind of tell me about the journey?
Journey was interesting. We had a hiatus because we agreed to go into the process on February 2020. And I think if you go back to February
February
2020,
2020. Yeah.
and you couldn't make this up. I was turning my 50th birthday. It was like the week before. I got the phone call, and I know the team at Air Coach, and I know the team at over the years you get to know all the players.
Yeah.
So I was chairperson for the bus and coach Northern Ireland. So I'm very much involved in the industry. So I knew the players. But I
Yeah.
got a lovely phone call from the chief executive of Air Coach, and we were just chatting. And I could tell that there was an interest, and they were asking would be willing to have a conversation. And I says, yes, it would be. And I remember after that going, this is the start. I think,
Yeah.
we everything was coming together, and we made a commitment to meet and talk. And we agreed then to move forward in discussions. That the pandemic came, and then we all went to our corners because we just know that the world
Yeah.
didn't know what was going on. But we started our business because I mean, that was a very difficult time for anybody in buses, the pandemic. But we were like servicing. There was a lot of nurse training going on, things like that. So it was quite an engaged period. So we weren't thinking about selling and anything. So everything paused. And then in the summertime again, I get a call from Air Coach. It's no, we just let you know we're still committed, and we're going to get
Wow.
this period out. And they come back, and it's like, wow. And like honestly, I think
Yeah.
there was so much else going on that the world was upside down. But I
Yeah.
remember that second call coming back and going, wow, okay. So
Mhm.
you just sort of knew then that universally there was something going on. And we just had to ride out that period of the pandemic, which
Right.
we did. And then we started in earnest the following 2022, November 22, we sat down with due diligence, completed then October 23.
Wow.
Completed October 22. That was it. So it was get my years mixed up.
2022.
Yeah.
Okay.
We sold in October 22.
Right. And you started.
And that was in 97.
Wow. Okay.
97,
Okay.
So yeah, so it's 20 odd years. Yeah. I know you're saying that
Yeah.
hardly changed
Yeah.
in that time.
That's amazing. That's a beautiful story. I love to kind of see it go through all the different stages. So yeah, okay. I'm gonna have some rapid fire questions now. It's not a really easy question, especially the first one that I have in mind, but I do want to ask this
Okay.
because for someone that's gone through all the different stages, there's so much you would have learned in the process. You would have learned so much about your business, about the operations, about yourself. Um, let's say this version of you that right now, and you were to hypothetically go back to yourself maybe when you were 6 months into the business, right? When you had just started, when you're going through all those startup pains, all those doubts in your mind, when you're wearing every single possible hat that you can wear and you're just overworked and stressed out and waking up at 4 o'clock. What advice would you give yourself based on everything that you learned so far? I know it's not an easy question,
Okay.
right?
I would say be patient. Be patient with yourself, because I think you are juggling and doing a lot, and then you sit, because I was saying to you, if you're a self starter, you put so much more pressure on yourself.
Right.
And I did, and and because there were so many moving parts. That operations is it's a lovely dynamic place to be involved in, because there's so
Yeah.
much change happening, and then you're always looking at how can you make improvements,
Right.
and then when things aren't going well, you put pressure on yourself. And if there was anything, I would say, look, breathe more, and just say, look, have faith in what you are doing. Sometimes the change will take a week or 2 weeks to bed down post the
Right.
decision, so sometimes you make a change and you want it to happen straight away.
Right.
So if I was to go back and say what change or what would you give, I say be easier on yourself and
Wow.
say
Yeah.
be more patient.
Be patient,
Yeah.
because the decisions that you make and the changes, it isn't going to be right away.
No.
But if you've made the right decisions, if you, trust yourself, just be patient because it's going to work out.
Yeah, so you can't just turn the page.
Yeah.
It's that sort of. I love the analogy of the oil tanker and the speedboat, and it takes 22 miles for the oil tanker to change course. Whereas the speedboat jumps out at night. So the bigger you get, you have to make changes. From 2, 3, 4, 30 buses.
Yeah.
You're juggling a lot, but at the early stages, you're dealing with like maybe a handful, 6 or 7 buses and drivers and stuff like this, and you're trying to make things go quicker. Because like this is the thing, and you're put yourself under pressure trying to get that, but it will come.
Right.
If you've done the work and the research, the demand, the demographics, and you put the work in, and then it's just to go easier on yourself.
Wow, awesome. Okay, I got another one.
Okay.
Again, not an easy one.
Okay.
Again, but okay. Well, as we all know, starting, building, growing a business is very, very easy. Sarcasm, right? There's anything that can go wrong will go wrong. What would you say is, one of the biggest mistakes that you had made in your business career, and then how did you overcome it? Like, how did you course correct? Because if it takes, like you said, 20 miles to turn, you're like, oh, this isn't the right turn. You had invested so much time and effort and money probably in that decision. Give me an example. I know it's not an easy question, but I know that for the listeners, this is, they're every day, right? Mistakes and things going right, things going wrong is a part of business. I just like to learn a little more.
Okay. All right. So, and I'm laughing because we used to say there's no such thing as a bad plan. All plans are good at the start. So you put all the work in and you press the button and you engage. Then when you watch something not work, and then it's not turning as fast for you, then the hardest part is making the decision to go back on that.
Yeah.
And can you say, can you think of one? I could give you 100, and it's a bit like, all the basketball hoops that you missed, that sort of way. So there are so many times that, you're, unless you try it. So in the ice hockey terms is you won't know until you kept throwing it into the net, So but basically we're in a position where I've made decisions, I've made calls, I've changed sizes of buses. And then that wasn't working. Then I'd changed back. So we went from like 41 seaters down to 29. Then we thought we'll go to back up to 33. 33 will work.
Yeah.
And they come in, that's not working. So
right.
So lots of, but that's part of it. But the important thing is that don't be afraid. To be wrong.
Right.
Because there isn't an answer. You're going to find the answer through these multiple iterations of trials.
Right.
There isn't, unfortunately, I wish there was a book there that says, that's chapter 3 has the answer. Right? And so I've had read chapter 1 and 2, but chapter 1 and 2 is get it all wrong first. Right. And then chapter 3 is learn from chapter 1 and chapter 2,
Yeah. And that's the key there, right? Like it's not really a mistake if you actually learn from it, right? No. As long as you grew and evolved from it, go ahead and make another one. Yeah. But you can't make the same one.
That's there's a word for that. But here's the thing: you will not know, unless you try.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying to you about, many times you'll try to throw the basketball or you try to throw the ice puck in the net, unless you try, it's not going to go anywhere.
Awesome. Well, I think that's kind of where we're going to kind of conclude this. Is there any last minute remarks, any last minute piece of advice, anything else that you want to give any of the listeners?
Well, yeah, but definitely, if you have a passion for it and you want to give it a go, it's an accessible industry to get in. If you're working with mobility, you're working with people. Again, that's my own area of expertise. I love it, and I think what we need is more passionate people in there for the sector to grow.
Yeah, well, I can definitely attest to you being extremely passionate about this industry. I'll give you guys an example. These are his coasters. A little street maps. I absolutely love it. Well, Niall, thank you so much for being the very first guest on our new podcast, The Dispatch. Amazing first guest. Yeah. So with that, I'm going to conclude the episode. I just want to say thank you all for tuning into the very first episode here. If you have any ideas for guests that we should have in this podcast, please let me know. Please reach out. If you have any ideas for topics that we should be discussing, anything at all, because at the end of the day, this is a podcast that we want to build for you. So you have a place to see the information that you want to see for yourself and your business. You have a place to connect, grow a community, and so on. So thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time. Cheers.